Well, shortstop was a struggle yet again for Detroit. We're going to talk about who played there in 2024 and what it may look like in 2025. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to discuss the position of shortstop in Detroit, which has been a position of much controversy over the last, I was going to say over the last 3 seasons, but honestly, it dates way before that, right? We remember the Willie and Harold Castro days at shortstop back in, 2020, even 2019. It has been a revolving door pretty much since Jose Iglesias left. And some of it, I was going to say some of it good, some of it not good. The fact of the matter is, really most of it has been not very good. It has been a whirlwind and way more downs than ups over at that position over the years. And unfortunately, that theme did not end in 2024. The Detroit Tigers were really, really, really struggling at shortstop yet again. This was a position that, if you just go based on amount of WAR accumulated at each position individually, the Tigers finished dead last in all of baseball at shortstop. In 2023, they did not even do that. They weren't even in the bottom 3, actually, in 2023. With outside of Trey Sweeney, largely the same cast. So this was a difficult nut to crack this year, and obviously you cannot have a conversation about shortstop with the Detroit Tigers without talking about Javier Baez. We're going to talk about all 3 of the players. Technically 4 did. Andy Ibanez played like 4 or 5 innings at shortstop this year, so tip of the cap to my dog, but this was mostly, almost entirely, manned by 3 different players. We're going to talk about all 3 of those today. Javy, Trey Sweeney, and Zach McKinstry. We have to start with Javy. We have to, because that is the millions and millions and millions, whatever it is, 20 AAV, the $20 million elephant in the room at the 22 million, whatever it is. In 78 games this year, comfortably the most played by any Tiger at shortstop on the season, he recorded a 185 average, a 222 on base percentage, a 295 slug, and overall on the season had a 515 OPS. That is a 43 WRC plus, which means that he is 57% worse than the league average hitter. Not a good hitter, not a great hitter, a league average hitter. 57% worse. He had a walk rate of 4.2%, a K rate of 24%, and accumulated negative 0.7 Fangraphs WAR at the shortstop position. Okay, so only talking about how he only had a few at-bats that he was like a pinch hitter or a DH or something, so there's not too much else to throw in there. Those are around his season stats, but those were his stats at shortstop. And he was comfortably last among Tigers to record 1 game at shortstop in WAR. He had the 14th worst WAR among players with 250 plate appearances at the major league level this year. So that's a bottom 15 player in the game of baseball. And there are, I believe, 3 years remaining on said contract. This has obviously been a rough contract so far for Javy and for the Detroit Tigers. It has not gone to plan whatsoever. And it is quickly becoming known as one of, not, I don't think it's the worst. I still think there's a third baseman out in Anaheim that probably has that title, but it is quickly becoming known as one of the worst contracts in the game of baseball. We'll start with the offense. The funny thing is when talking about Javy's offense is actually the last 2 seasons have been his 2 lowest strikeout rates of his career, which obviously has not been worth it and hasn't really meant anything or done anything positive for him. It's just kind of a funny anecdote to throw out there. He has an OPS barely over 500. I don't really care if he's only striking out 24, 25% of the time or whatever it is, but it's interesting to say the least. I would trade 15, maybe even 20% of his K rate for him to have an OPS of 700, right? Genuinely, I could handle him striking out legitimately 40% of the time, maybe even 45% of the time, if it meant he had an OPS of 700 for real. The organization has mentioned that his injury and the surgery that he had at season end, or when he stopped playing, I should say, when his season ended, hopefully is going to be helpful for him going forward. Obviously, that's kind of self-explanatory. But the injury, apparently, according again to the organization, prevented him from twisting and turning as much as he is used to and as violently as he has his whole career when he swings the bat. And they believe that this is going to help him going forward. He is at a point now, certainly with me, and I would imagine with a lot of other people as well, where we are going to have to see it to believe it. I'm not just going to be oh yeah, the guy with a 515 OPS got a surgery and now he's going to be a really good hitter again for the first time in 4 years. I'm going to have to see it. I'm not going into a season expecting anything from Javy at the plate. As far as, what went wrong specifically in this catastrophic season for him, this guy used to destroy fastballs. That used to be his living, was just crushing fastballs. And now he is late on almost all of them and can barely hit 200 against fastballs over the course of a season, which is sad. Legitimately, this dude used to be one of the most exciting players the sport had to offer. Was the approach flawed? Absolutely. Was there a bunch of holes in his game? Absolutely. But he was really good at his peak, despite all of that, and was legitimately one of the most electric players in ball. And now he's hitting 200 against four-seam fastballs with no power. And the approach has been there his whole career, man. I'm very tired of hearing about how the approach is the reason Javy is bad. Javy's approach has been the same for 10 years, and this guy has gotten MVP votes and been a 6-WAR player before. He used to swing at balls 10 feet out of the strike zone when he was putting up 6-win seasons too. The approach is not why he's bad. It doesn't help. I'm not saying it's a good approach. I'm just saying that's not the reason he's bad. He's maintained it for a decade. High whiff rate, high chase rate, etc., etc. But he used to crush mistakes, and he doesn't do that anymore. We'll talk about the comparison between his 2023 and 2024 season, and then we'll obviously get to Sweeney, McKinstry, and what we can expect from the position in 2025. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made the daily fantasy sports game accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game all season long with Prize Picks. They have so many great offers and deals as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And then my favorite is the injury insurance policy. If you have a player go down in the first half of a game and they are a part of your play, then, and they don't come back in the second half of a game, then your play stays alive and it stays active. One of the many great features over at Prize Picks. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On MLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, keeping the ball rolling on our player breakdowns. So, Javy is where we left off. That is where we are still at. The only reason he finished with a positive WAR in 2023 was because last year, again, as in 2023 year, was he had great defense. And that was one of the main arguments for not parting ways with him, right? Like, at least you're getting incredible defense. He has clutch hitting, et cetera, et cetera. This year, he was a -4 defensive runs saved at shortstop and a -1 outs above average. Still had a plus arm for what it's worth, but we all know about the throwing errors that have been tied with him for his entire career as well. So the one thing that he really hung his hat on last year escaped him this year as well. So is there even a silver lining here, right? That's like the biggest question. Is there anything, like, assuming he's around next year, is there anything to do besides just kind of cross your fingers and hope that the surgery helps him? Like, he's kind of the new Miguel Cabrera in the sense that it's like best shape of his life every year. I'm not comparing him to Miggy in any other way before I get comments about being disrespectful to Miguel Cabrera. Goodness. I'm just saying, like, he's going to show up to spring and there's going to be an article about how, like, he's in great shape and the swing looks better and whatever. And then he's going to have similar numbers. So trying to find a silver lining. I guess there's somewhat of a conversation surrounding a platoon next year. We'll talk about that much more in depth at the end of the show when we talk about kind of shortstop in 2025. But his splits this year against lefties, he hit 159 with a 423 OPS. Against righties, he had 191 with a 543 OPS. Both of those stink for starters. But I think more importantly, he has crushed lefties his entire career. So I guess, like, you can hope for just like a bounce back in that department. We have 9 years of him destroying lefties. Like, even in his bad years with the Tigers, even like he still hit lefties decently well. This year, he didn't hit anybody well. Post All-Star break and before his injury, he hit 197 with a 677 OPS. I can't even believe that we're like, this is the conversation we're having. In August, he hit 214 with a 688 OPS. And I'm trying to, like, hey, well, that's better. I guess it is better than what he was doing before. But, like, that's not good. But it's better, I guess, if you're really trying hard to squint and find a silver lining here. The one thing that he maintained being good at was RISP. He hit 308 with an 893 OPS with runners in scoring position. We're at a point now where even the stuff he was doing well the last couple of years, as the numbers really fell off the table hard, those are even starting to go away. Again, outside of RISP somehow. So it really does, to me, feel like the conversation surrounding Javy in 2025, assuming he's here, is genuinely just going to be a let's just hope. Trey Sweeney played 36 games at shortstop for the Detroit Tigers, the third most on the team. He hit 218 with a 269 OBP and a 373 slug. He recorded a 642 OPS overall. Those first numbers I gave you were just his numbers on days where he played shortstop, which again for him were close to every game he played. But I want to make this shortstop centric here. He recorded half a win, 0.5 FWAR at shortstop specifically. Again, had a 5.9 walk rate and a 26.9% K rate. Obviously, the shortstop that was acquired in the Jack Flaherty deal, who is a win away from becoming a World Series champion. This was a solid showing from Sweeney. Small sample size, and at the end of the year, he really filled that empty void that was left at shortstop very nicely in those 36 games. For real, I think did he blow everybody away and look like a future superstar? No, but like he filled a position that was a black hole. Not only because like Javy was almost a -1 win player, but then he got hurt. Like they literally didn't have anybody to play the position every day. And Sweeney, I think, filled in that role and did a pretty decent job. He's a pretty athletic dude, good speed. We saw some solid defense as well. He was a plus defender at plus DRS, plus OAA at a premier position. Shortstop is one of the most premier positions on the field. It is one of the most important positions to have good defense at on the entire field. So it's a good thing. And considering what this fan base has been used to at shortstop over the last 3, again, plus seasons, I think most people were pretty pleased, pleasantly, a lot of P words, pleasantly pleased with the production we saw from him. Offensively, in August, he hit under 200 and had an OPS under 550. Not great. But in September, he hit 230 with a 685 OPS and some solid defense. Is that amazing? No. Is it even like really good? No. But I think we all kind of looked around and went, we'll take it. We'll take it. Then he struggled mightily in the postseason. I think only had 1 or 2 hits, had a K rate over 40%. Did not have very much success in the playoffs. One of the things that I was most surprised about from his small sample size, again, 35, 36 games there this season, was his decent showing against left-handed pitching. Very, very small sample here. We're talking like less than 20 plate appearances, but he did pretty well against lefties. And I didn't anticipate him to A, do well against lefties, B, even really get any opportunities against lefties. So credit to the coaching staff and whatnot for putting him in positions to A, have opportunities, and B, succeed in those. His swing, just mechanically, is very loopy. Very, very, big kind of loopy uppercut swing. And that isn't inherently a bad thing. We've seen players put together great seasons with bat paths that are relatively similar to that. But it caused him to be a huge boom or bust type of hitter so far in his Tigers tenure. And we'll kind of break that down further here. So his slugging percentage against breaking balls, any breaking ball, slider, curveball, whatever, sweeper, you name it, was 571. That is really good. Really, really good. All of his homers were off of breaking balls. Like he crushed them, right? But he hit 238 against them and had a swing and miss rate that was over 45% against breaking balls. Against off-speed pitches, he had a terrible slugging percentage against those and had a whiff rate of 47%. So he swung and missed at almost half of every non-fastball he saw this season. That is a ton. That is an astronomically high number. But on the few pitches that he didn't get a swing and miss on, that were a little bit hangy, right? He crushed them. He hit the ball hard when he did hit the ball, found the barrel a lot, and despite the high whiff rate, he didn't have a ridiculously high K rate. It wasn't great. It was still above league average, but it wasn't, 35, 40% or something, right? It was still in the 20s. So he needs to walk more. That's another thing. If you're going to swing and miss this much, you need to draw more walks and be better with just your decision-making on what pitches to swing at and what pitches to not swing at. But there is a profile here that can be a valuable player. If we get plus defense, good speed, and a guy that can hit for some pop, from the left side, I think that there can be value in that profile. I'm just not sure it results in an everyday starting MLB shortstop from what we've seen so far. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth after the break and after we talk about Zach McKinstry. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you all today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, the lowest price guarantee can make Game Time let you take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So many great offers and deals over at Game Time. They have zone deals, so you can save even more when you choose a section, and then Game Time chooses the seat and the row. It's a really fun way to save some money that way. You can also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy it. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. So the last shortstop on our list that played games legitimately, again, shout out Andy Ibanez, but that played a legitimate amount of games at shortstop for the team this year was Zach McKinstry. Z-Mac played 118 games total, but only 40 or so of those were at shortstop. Hit .215 with a .277 OBP and a .337 slug. That is a .614 OPS, was overall worth 1.1 Fangraphs WAR. 0.6 of that WAR was at shortstop, which led the Detroit Tigers. Zach McKinstry was the most valuable shortstop on the team in 2024. Let that sink in. Okay? Open the door. Let that porcelain sink in. He had a 7.4% walk rate and a 21.2% K rate. You know, I don't have too much to say about McKinstry. I think we're all pretty aware of what he is as a player, a solid utility player, and had a solid year for the Tigers given his role. Again, was worth over a win. Like, that out of a lefty bat that is a super utility type of player, I'm going to take most days. We talk all the time about how his versatility provides value. He can play plus defense pretty much everywhere, and shortstop is obviously included in that. He had a really good year defensively at shortstop specifically, was worth +4 outs above average. He's pretty much unplayable against left-handed pitching. Against right-handed pitching, he hit .225 with a .640 OPS. Is that great? No. Is it serviceable given what the Tigers were trying to do this year? Most days, yeah, it was fine. And yet again, for the second year in a row, he had 1 month where he was the best hitter like on the entire planet. In August, Zach McKinstry hit .368 with a .955 OPS. And in September, he had a .449 OPS. So that is just the Zach McKinstry experience. So let's wrap this up by talking about shortstop as a whole, okay? In 2025, what do we do with shortstop? Is it just these three again? Is that the plan? We're just going to roll out these three guys in some capacity again and hope that it's better next year? I think there's a chance that is the answer to this question. I think we could see a Javy and Trey Sweeney platoon at shortstop next year. And is that the best case scenario? No. But look, if there is a way to remove Javy from this roster this winter without spending a ton of money, then I'm sure everyone, front office included, owner included, GM included, president of baseball ops included, everybody would be down. But based on what we've heard so far, and it's very early, it's still October, it's still very early in the offseason, but what we've heard so far from the front office is that it sounds like he's going to be back. And I am planning my offseason and my, predictions and what I'm expecting from the team in 2025 with the assumption that Javi's going to be on the roster to start off the year. You cannot, under any circumstance, justify as an organization playing Javi Baez every day at shortstop next year. You cannot do it. I have serious concerns about Trey Sweeney's ability to play everyday shortstop long-term going forward. But maybe a platoon of the two of them hitting in the bottom of the lineup can result in like a 1-2 WAR season from the shortstop position. The Tigers this year received 0.1 FWAR from shortstop. That, again, as we started the show, was 30th. So with all the momentum that this team has going for it, I understand the frustration of what I just said. I understand the frustration of hearing that and going, wow, we're just going to run into 2025 with like the same cast of characters. I guess ish. Like Trey Sweeney is a new acquisition and it wasn't on the team on opening day. I would like to give Trey Sweeney some opportunities at the MLB level. I would like for him to get at bats, and maybe this is really the only way that that's going to happen in 2025. Besides just like cutting Javi outright and not bringing in anybody else and just having him be the 162 game starter. But I think ideally most of us would want like a complete overhaul of the position. Now, again, I want to give Sweeney some opportunities. I want to give him that opportunity that I think he's probably deserved. I just don't think I don't think that Javi is going anywhere. It's really what this all comes down to. I think there's a decent chance McKinstry is a roster casualty of the winter. I think that that course may have finally hit the end of its road there. But I have a really strong feeling that it is going to be Sweeney and Javi, righty-lefty platoon at shortstop in 2025. And if it doesn't work with Javi in that situation next year, then I guess the seat gets warmer. Like, I don't know. I don't know how much of this conversation, like, I don't know what I don't know, right? I've never spoken to Chris Ilitch or Scott Harris. Like, I don't know if there is a thing from ownership where it's just like, you know, we're just going to grit our teeth and bear it and play the next 3 years out. We're not doing a buyout. We're not paying him money to go away. Like, he's going to be on the team no matter what. Or if there is a level of production or a lack of production, I should say, that he could reach, that would make the team cut ties with him. But like, the dude just put up a 515 OPS season and got hurt, and he's not going anywhere. So like, again, based on my reading right now, hopefully, you know, I'm sure most people are saying, hopefully you're wrong, but that's where we are. Ultimately, my biggest thing, if you take away one thing from this, you agree with everything I've said, you disagree with everything I said, you're somewhere in the middle. My biggest takeaway, you cannot, under any circumstance, have Javi Baez be the everyday starting shortstop for the 2025 Detroit Tigers. As long as that isn't the plan, I will live with any other platoon, we're trying to get the best out of everybody scenario that this coaching staff concocts going into the season, as long as it's not that one. Thanks for bringing Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow as we continue our player breakdowns. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.